How did we get into our current cultural chaos? Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. First Liberty Institute is the nation's largest nonprofit legal organization that exclusively does religious freedom cases. If that's something that resonates with you, well, you're going to enjoy this conversation, and we're also glad that you found us here. And if you'd like to support the work that we do, you can click the big red Give button up at the top of firstlibertylive.com. Our guest today is my good friend Tim Goeglein. He served in the George W. Bush White House, where he established the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. Currently, he serves as Vice President of External and Government Relations for Focus on the Family. And he also, when he was 12 years old, hosted a TV show in Fort Wayne, Indiana called News for Little People. Hi, Tim.
How are you doing, Stuart? And by the way, I've done a number of interviews. You're the first one to bring that factoid up.
What was that? I mean, do you remember it well?
I do. It was the #1 independent TV station in the United States, and I had 5 minutes in the afternoon after Leave It to Beaver and before Andy Griffith. And it was a very popular afternoon show for kids. I love doing it.
That's fantastic. You've got a new book I want to talk to you about. The title is Stumbling Toward Utopia. I'm going to read the full title, How the 1960s Turned into a National Nightmare and How We Can Revive the American Dream. Why do you see the 1960s as such a pivot point for American culture?
Because it gave us a profound social and moral revolution. And it gave to us a social and moral revolution with no equal, Stuart, in all of American history. In fact, the founding fathers and mothers in the American Revolution never called it the American Revolution because, by and large, it was a conservative revolution. But that was not true of the cauldron and the charnel house of the 1960s and 70s. And, Stuart, if people are asking themselves, how in the world did we get into the mess we are in America in the 21st century? As you will see in Stumbling Toward Utopia, you can follow the breadcrumbs directly back to the 60s and 70s.
As I was thinking through the thoughts that you have in the book, it struck me that one of the key differences between a liberal, progressive, and Christian conservative point of view in looking at the world is how we view the human condition. If you're on the left, you view people as inherently good, so we're all moving toward this wonderful thing, and we just need to get out of the way and let humanity progress toward that wonderful outcome. Christian conservatives see the world from a biblical point of view, that we are all inherently sinful, and we need to look to a higher power for guidance in this world. Explain how those two worldviews have played out over the decades since the 60s. They've really been in conflict.
I love the paradigm you draw because it's exactly the one that is the narrative of Stumbling Toward Utopia. Our founding fathers really understood that mankind is fallen and that in a great constitutional republic, you have to design a government that divides up the power. You don't give anybody or any group too much power, and therefore checks and balances and the power, and maybe I would say the genius of the United States Constitution. But progressives believe in the perfectibility of man. That's why I called this Stumbling Toward Utopia. They are the ultimate social engineers, Stuart. They believe if we can just have the government fine-tune politics and public policy, fine-tune the family, fine-tune the inner cities, fine-tune the universities, the colleges and schools, ipso facto, we will have a near utopia. Now, that sounds strange to most ears because it is strange. But frankly, that is precisely the kind of thinking that gave us the revolution of the 60s and 70s.
And one thing you point out in the book is the original origin, the origin of the word utopia was also caught up in the idea that it's something that was never achievable, that it was That's not right. something that we could actually do. Unpack that for us.
Yes, I love this title, if I may say, because it goes to the work of Sir Thomas More, who created Utopia in his fiction. And as you have said so beautifully, the incredible irony of this is that More ultimately finds out that you ought not design any country, culture, or civilization along the lines of the utopian ideal, because ultimately it's not just flawed, but otherwise good people really get hurt. And may I say, paradigmatically, that is precisely the result of the social and moral revolution and the radicalization of our most important institutions. And I have to say that in 2024, it's important that conservatives and Christians, all of us, that we understand what happened then and how we have to deal with all of those bad ideas now.
You deal with various spheres of culture in each chapter of the book, and I want to focus on three of those. The first one is entertainment, which really, culturally, often serves as a de facto educator for a society. Describe for me how we got from Andy Griffith to everything that's on Netflix today.
Yeah, well, in two words, Norman Lear. In fact, Norman Lear plays a starring role in Stumbling Toward Utopia because he was a person who did not believe that the kind of humor that he wanted to create in primetime America in the 60s and 70s was going to be anything like Andy Griffith, Leave It to Beaver, Father's Knows Best, etc. And by the way, those programs, and they are really funny, and they'll be funny 100 years from now, they are not the kind of uncomplicated mesh that so many of their critics say they are. They're actually quite important stories. But what Lear did is he removed this kind of quasi-wholesomeness, right? Where marriage, family, parenting, real life plays a starring role in real life situations. He removed that and he inserted in huge quantities large amounts of skepticism, cynicism, and satire. And so by the 1970s, it's Mayberry RFD, is a glint in somebody's eye, and now the most profound social issues, moral issues of our time are being held up in a way that is very important to study. And I do so because I show that that popular entertainment is important in America, but its impact is enormous in public policy.
Another enormous impact that we've seen. You work for Focus on the Family, and Dr. James Dobson, decades ago, started that organization, founded it, with an eye on the disintegration of the nuclear family and the impact that that would have on culture. And the organization was founded to try to shore up marriage and families and the raising of children. As you look at the impact of the breakup of the family in America, help us understand the impact that's had, not just on each individual, but culturally at large.
I really appreciate you asking that because Focus on the Family really is second to none if you care deeply about marriage, family, parenting, human life, and all of the issues that we're talking about. And I believe that Dr. Dobson, as the founder of Focus on the Family, Jim Daly as its president, what they saw and what they see is a result of what was happening in this moral revolution. It was a frontal assault on marriage, family, and parenting. I'll give one very quick example. In 1960, remember, this is only 1960, 73% of all young Americans were living in a married, intact house. By 1980, that number was down to 51%, and by 2015, Stuart, that number was barely 43%.
Wow.
Today, 73% of all Black Americans are born out of wedlock. 53% of Hispanic Americans are born out of wedlock. And the majority of native-born whites are born out of wedlock. The majority of babies born to women who are 30 years of age and under are now born out of wedlock. The sexual revolution had a catastrophic effect on the American family. And now in 2024, we have the lowest marriage and the lowest fertility rates in all of recorded American history.
And that's what the numbers are, but it also has an impact on individual lives because it changes your whole view of the world when you're raised in a family that has come apart like that. Describe for me some of the cultural impact of that breakup.
Well, may I say, the progressives wanted to see the traditional family coming apart at the seams. As you'll see in Stumbling Toward Utopia, when I was doing the research for this book, I was preoccupied by the evolution that brought us to the radicalism of the period we're discussing. And what I found, Stuart, is that this was intentional. The sexual revolution was created by a relatively small coterie of like-minded people They were very uncomfortable with faith. They were very uncomfortable with religion. They were really uncomfortable with mothers, fathers, women, men, boys, and girls, and they deliberately wanted to invert reality. This is a very big part of the 1960s and 70s, and so this whole idea that how do we become so polarized? Where do all these polarities come from? What about these chasms, this uneven time? You will see in Stumbling Toward Utopia, it was baked into the DNA of the plan, and here we are.
You also have a chapter on religion. Of course, our focus here at First Liberty is religious freedom. And you explain the backstory for why we're having now to go to court to protect a coach who wants to take a knee on a football field, a physician assistant who believes that men are men and women are women, and medically would like to keep thinking that way, or even someone who wants to choose what message to express on a cake. How has the societal view of religion changed since the 60s? When I talk to young people today, they think the way it is now is the way it's always been, but that's just not true.
I think you are asking the largest historic question, Stuart, and I'll give you a very short answer. The short answer is that progressivism holds up, champions, and then imposes a moral relativism and a nihilism that I find is as corrosive and as malignant as a terrible cancer. And this was on purpose. Just using one example, I write at length about an author, an activist called Saul Alinsky, and a book that he wrote as the playbook of the 1960s and 70s progressive activism called Rules for Radicals. You can read the rules. He champions polarization. He champions the targeting of people who are of faith and religion. I was shocked. I did not know that the most important book of the New Left and progressivism, was dedicated to Lucifer. You really cannot make this up. And yet, when we wake up in 2024 and we look at the issue of religious liberty and the rights of conscience, which First Liberty Institute does better than anyone, you all are in the front seat on this. It's not shocking to understand completely how we came to this, because you see, as I say in the book, that the founder of the ACLU, was a communist, and he purposely wanted to invert the legal system and the Constitution as he knew it.
Explain for us, from where you sit, why the founders would have put in the First Amendment, the very first freedom, that line about the free exercise of religion. Why is that so crucial to a free society?
I keep a portrait in my office here in Washington of very few politicians, but one of them is the author of the Constitution and the author of the Bill of Rights, and that is, of course, James Madison. He was writing the Bill of Rights when he was a representative in the House of Representatives, but really it is because of James Madison that we have this remarkable First Amendment. And I think it's very important, Stuart, as I say in Stumbling Toward Utopia, that we understand the irony of this. The irony is that our founding fathers and the framers specifically wrote and designed the First Amendment in large measure to protect conscience, to protect religious liberty. And now that very amendment is too often being used as a truncheon against people of faith and conscience. My friend Robbie George at Princeton University wrote a fabulous book called Conscience and Its Enemies. And what Robbie shows so beautifully, in which I distill in Stumbling Toward Utopia, is that we are now at a moment, Stuart, where we are honor bound to confront the dogmas of liberal secularism.
The people watching this are probably thinking, Stuart, thanks for bringing such a discouraging guest on for today with all this bad news about how things are going. But I know you, and I know you're an optimist, and you're hopeful for the future, and your book carries that tone with it. How do we get from here to where we ought to be rather than where we're headed currently?
I will tell you, I am an inveterate optimist, and I believe that the best days truly are ahead for the United States. And I believe so because overwhelmingly people of goodwill have looked at the data, they've looked at the reality of the cataclysm of progressivism, and I believe that they want something different. Look what's happening in the country already. I mean, we should be extremely, rightfully encouraged and hopeful. We have people who have never been to a school board meeting. They're not even sure how a curriculum is designed. They're running and winning on the school boards.
Right.
We were having this massive national debate on trans. And of a sudden, people overwhelmingly of both political parties say, I don't think I want boys in girls' sports. I don't think I want men in women's sports. We had that remarkable clarifying moment, didn't we, at the Olympics when a woman was boxed in the face. A terrible thing. And people who before could sort of look the other way or not have an opinion, of a sudden, they had opinions. The homeschool movement is booming. School choice is booming. The charter school movement is booming. Of a sudden, we have great movies that you can take your kids to again.
Yeah, we do.
So I think in the space of entertainment, law, politics, public policy, culture, sports, I think there are identifiable reasons to say that an American restoration or regeneration or renewal is in fact possible.
What are some other ways that we as individuals can contribute to that momentum, to that inertia forward?
I write about it at length in the last third of the book. I say if we are serious about restoration and confronting the liberal dogmas that I have spoken about and written about, it's not going to be coming from Washington, D.C., or from Wall Street, or Broadway, or Hollywood, or Silicon Valley. I believe very strongly that if we're serious as a nation about restoration and renewal, it begins in our homes, in our marriages, in our neighborhoods, in our churches, in our parishes, in our local schools. It's not that we do not have a national role. We do. And we need a lot more people of faith here in Washington. But I believe ultimately, if we're serious about a measurable, important national revival, and I think we will have one, I think it begins really organically in the place where God has placed us. And I think religious liberty really is in many ways first among equals, because if we don't have religious liberty in the United States, then frankly, Stuart, we don't really have the United States.
I really appreciate the insights that you share in this book. It's so important to have the context of how we got here to understand the path to get out of this place that we're in now. And you've done that so well in the book. Anything else you'd like to share before I let you go?
I think just one thing, and it is the following. I think we have to have a national recommitment to the first institutions, to what T.S. Eliot called the permanent things. I think we have to reintroduce to the rising generation of young Americans the goodness and sanctity of marriage, the goodness and sanctity of babies and children, the goodness and sanctity of all these first institutions that make life worth living. And it seems to me, Stuart, that whoever wants the rising generation of Americans is going to get them. And I think we have to be very intentional about going to the rising generation of young people and reintroducing the things that matter most.
Tim Goeglein is the author of Stumbling Toward Utopia. Always good to talk to you, Tim. I always learn something. Thanks for joining us today.
Such a pleasure. Many blessings. Thank you, Stuart.
All right. And if you want to see America's religious heritage defended, would you consider supporting our work here at First Liberty Institute? If these topics resonate with you, if it's something you care about, you can help make a difference in the real world on these issues by supporting the work we do here. Just look for the big red Give button up at the top of our website. First Liberty is fighting for what matters most.